example, the limb is like, man, it's so funny. It's there's a video I saw the other day. It'd be hard for me to find it now probably, but it was somebody else talking about the video. And they were talking about how they were so scared of even a pencil poking the liner, the wall of the limb, because it was so thin. I don't know how that can withstand a vacuum of, the vacuum of space being like, so what is it, 76 quintillion
let's call it zero.
Times,
let's call it zero pressure. It's close enough to zero pressure.
Let's just say it's zero, sure.
Okay, so this can here, the outside of the can, when it's sealed, the outside of the can is what pressure? 14
pounds, yeah.
14.7 psi. Let's call it 15, right?
Sure.
Inside of this can is about 60 psi. So a difference of 45 psi. This thin can, this little thin aluminum can handle a difference of 45 psi. Now,
14 to 60, that's what, 4 times the pressure?
It's the differential that matters.
Yeah, but let's just say it's 4. Yeah. So like from 14, from the external being 14 to the inside of the can being 60, let's say it's 4 times or 5 times the amount of pressure.
The factor, the multiplication factor, doesn't matter when you're trying to keep pressure.
So according to Toon, he's talking about differential, but doesn't want to point out that it's exponential. He wants to talk about differential and act like, oh, it's just from 14, it just goes to 0 and that's it. Okay? I don't think he believes this. I mean, he acts like a smart man. He seems to be intelligent, but most people like that really ain't got a lick of fucking common sense. But let me just put a little common sense into this, okay? So he wants to say, okay, it gets down to 0. The pressure gets down to 0 from 14.7, and that's it. Except we can never get to 0. And well, let's listen to a little bit more of his horse shit.
In or keep pressure out, it's the differential that matters. That's all that matters. Not the factor, right? The multiplication.
Okay, I mean,
so if for example, you were to manufacture this in an environment of 30 psi, you could put into it 75 psi, right? And then keep it at 30 psi, have that same differential, and all of the structural stuff would be the same. But
so all the structural stuff would be the same. So, okay, let's put a little common sense to this. So we know for them to get to the largest vacuum, or one of the largest known vacuums on Earth, which is like 10 to the 8th torr, I believe, maybe, whatever, 10 to the 10th, 11th, who cares, okay? We know that they tell us space is 10 to the negative 17 torr, which is still a positive pressure. But we also know that we could never reach a perfect vacuum. So let's put this in perspective. They have the horsepower pumps. They have umpteen, I don't even know the horsepower pumps. But let's picture it like this. Picture a plunger, and you're trying to pull out the plunger to create a vacuum, okay? But you know you could never get out all of the air. So no matter how hard you pull that plunger, let's make it big, like the size of a car or something, like a big syringe with a big handle, a plunger like 5 foot tall. And we're trying to pull that plunger back as far as we can to make the biggest, best, strongest vacuum we can. But we know we could never get it perfectly evacuated. So then we tie ropes to it and have a horse pull it. Or like a 5 horsepower pump and have 5 horses pulling on that plunger. So do you think that it could just get to, you could only compare the 14.7 pounds to 0, like the can that Toon speaks of? It could hold, all the way up to 0, because it withstands the 60 pounds of pressure, 40 pounds of pressure. Of course it could withstand. No. The more horses you had pulling on that plunger, the more horsepower the pumps, the stronger that vacuum gets. He is trying to mislead people, either on purpose or because he's retarded. I mean, and has no common sense. I'm just going to start pointing this shit out. These people are either retarded or they're lying. It's plain and simple.